Sorry.
Cats have entered the room.
It's another fantastic week with Case Files with Kat and Ashley and my support kitties.
All the support kitties.
Yes, they can.
Hey, y'all.
Yes, hey.
It's your birthday month, and we haven't even talked about that.
That's okay. That's whatever.
It's well, I already have your present, so it's sitting right in there. It's really hard for me not to give it to you, but
Is it socks?
No, you're not. You're not getting my cat. She's trying to talk Socks into leaving our house after every time we record. Like, you ready?
He is my support cat. He clearly is always at the door ready to go. He's being held hostage here.
He is not being held. He's had the taste of that outdoor life. He would hate my dogs, so. I think your dogs would hate him.
My dogs would be afraid of him. They've never seen a cat ever in their lives. I don't even know if they've ever seen another dog. Other than, maybe when they were in the kennel. I was going to say they had to have at the kennel. What
about like on walks and stuff?
Not really.
No, you don't see a lot of... Nobody lives in your neighborhood, apparently. You don't have trick-or-treaters.
The trick-or-treaters go to rich neighborhoods, right? Like, I don't live in a very rich neighborhood. And the only time I ever really see people walking dogs is like in the front of the neighborhood near the school. Or there's an older lady who she's got an elderly dog that she pushes in the stroller every morning. So I don't really see... In the evenings, I don't really see too many people.
There's a lady with 2 dogs. And then her cat follows behind her when they go for a walk. Not on a leash, just like
that's cute.
Follows right behind, like 6 feet behind. Just
my dogs would never. They have to be on a leash. They have to be in harnesses because
the dogs are on leashes, but the cat's not.
I know. I'm just like in the mornings I usually let them out in the yard, but as far as walking goes, I don't ever.
You don't encounter others.
I live in the back of a neighborhood, so.
I didn't give you a drink today.
I'm okay.
I got some Love Street, some St. Arnold Love Street. I'm going to get one for you.
Well, sure.
When you're starting your story.
Sure. Love Street sounds pleasant.
Yeah. I got another one of those Howdy low dose lemonades.
The drinks with THC from Eighth Wonder are so like, when I'm there, people are just like clearing them out constantly from like the thing. I haven't had one.
You know what?
I had one, but I didn't taste anything.
I don't taste anything, but I don't feel anything either. It is just refreshing. So I'll probably go to.
Maybe it's more for people who don't. You know what I mean? Who
partake. It's 5 milligrams. Maybe it's just too slow, and maybe I'm too slow ingesting it because it does take me a long time.
Yeah, maybe you have to like chug it. I mean, I don't know. I didn't feel any different.
Yeah.
Either.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe we're potheads is what you're saying.
I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just saying I didn't feel anything either. I mean, they tasted great, but I didn't.
No, yeah. That is not us. That is not. We are.
I'm too old.
We are squares. We are just squares. Squeaky clean squares. Anyway, what you got? What you got? I'm going to get you a beer while you're talking.
Okay. So I really, really wanted to do that story that our friend suggested that was kind of local, that he grew up with the kid. But I couldn't find a lot of information on that story. So I'm reaching out to him to make sure I'm even just like spelling the name correctly, because I just couldn't find, and I feel like there's got to be information on it.
Oscar, so help us out.
Yeah. So I'm going to reach out to him. I got his information, but instead I found this other story that I really wanted to cover because at the time that it happened, it got a lot of attention in the town that it happened in, but not a lot of other media attention. Mm-hmm. And it's such a wild story. So that's what I'm going to do. Yes. Okay. So David Grubbs was 23 years old, and he lived in Ashland, Oregon. He lived in a town that was described as like what books are written about, a town that Hallmark could only dream of, right? Like a small
I bet Hallmark has been there.
Well, probably now. But like, basically, it was a very small town. Crime didn't happen. It was, everyone kind of knew everybody. Mm-hmm. Like, it was just a very pleasant town. It was known for their Shakespeare's festival that they have every year. It was known for, like, they had this really big, really popular park that was known for. So it wasn't known for, like, crime, right? The police department wasn't even equipped to handle the type of thing that happened. Not because they didn't care, but just because it had never happened in this town. So, anyways, he was born November 23rd, 1987, and died November 19th, 2011.
Oh my gosh, he was so young.
So young and so close to his birthday. I mean, I don't know, it's just sad.
I know, yeah.
So, he was actually born...
You said that was Ashland, Oregon?
Yeah, he was born a year and 3 days after me. Anyways, so what I was able to learn about him, he was described as very friendly. His friends would describe him as a diamond in the rough, the kind of person who always wanted to make people around him happy and uplifted. One of his friends referred to him as the king of Halloween because his dedication of going above and beyond for Halloween every single October.
Nice.
But I just like that they had to throw that in for his story. I loved it. When you watch interviews about his friends and family talking about him, even his coworkers and his former boss, they all talk about him with like a sparkle in their eye. Aww. You know what I mean? Like everything they're saying, I feel like they actually mean, and they're not just throwing cliches out there.
He lit up a room.
Yeah, right. Like they very much mean what they're saying, and they very much miss him, and they still talk about him and do things in his honor all of the time. Like his boss, his coworkers, his friends, his family, all of them. So he was an avid video gamer. He worked as a clerk at the shopping cart grocery and would take the same path home almost every single day after work. So this path was... I'll talk a little bit more about it soon, but like it was a very straightforward path from the store to his house. It wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't a wooded area. It was very out in the open. So anyways, so that's important for later. But he was tall, physically fit. He stood over 6 feet tall. He had no known enemies, and he hung around with a crowd of musicians and artists. His friend Mig Windows was quoted in a News 10 article saying, "He was a big guy. He was tall. He was the sort of person who I would ask to walk me home at night. So the fact that he wasn't safe walking home at night is terrifying."
Oh, God, that's a good point. And it wasn't even night. It was daytime.
Yeah.
Damn. Well, even early evening.
Yeah. So, and then his best friend was named Garrison, and he said in an interview with Dateline, he said, "To this day, I have never met anyone like David, who just had a natural capacity to get along with everybody. David did not have an enemy in this world." So on the evening of November 19th, 2011, like I said, he was 23, he ended his shift at the shopping cart. Him and this other guy that were working together, they had the same shift, but he got off a little bit early. So he didn't do his full shift, and he began walking home. So his walk home was on a very well-traveled bike path in the town. This town bordered a residential neighborhood and a city park. Like, people were, like, this was the heart of the town, is what this path is described as. It is very well used, very well lit, very, like I said, traveled. I mean, it wasn't like a path through the woods. It wasn't a nature trail or a back road or anything like that. And so for all realistic purposes, he had no reason to fear for his safety, his life, anything like that. So when he left his shift, it was going to be a 30-minute walk home. It had been raining that day, so it was dark a little bit earlier than normal. So around 5:30 p.m., the Ashland Police received a phone call about a body in Hunter Park. So this is the park that ran along the bike path. A woman had come across the scene and had seen an unknown man leaving the scene. So she is the only one she didn't see anything happen, but as she was walking down the path, she saw someone fleeing, but she couldn't see...
Like running, fleeing?
Like
or
running. Like running away.
But not like running the exercise.
Right.
Like,
right.
Obviously, that person was like, I'm out of here.
It said fleeing. So I assume that means that, like, technically, she said she saw an unknown man leaving the scene. Now, could this have been someone that came across the body and just didn't want to get involved? Was this person the one that did it? They couldn't.
But it was that close to the body.
Yeah, they never found this man. They couldn't identify him. They didn't have cameras because, again, nothing in this town ever really, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't somewhere that you had to.
Hypnosis?
So
God, I would have tried hypnosis just for myself. I would have been like, I want to find out how much I remember, you know?
Yeah, she didn't, it was dark, it was raining, so she couldn't really see any. The man had his back to her, and he left the scene. So when she came across the body, she immediately called the police. By the time the police were on the scene, paramedics had already declared David dead of what they said was an apparent gun wound shot. However, upon closer inspection, the detective on scene noticed deep slash wounds on his neck. He had almost been decapitated. So it wasn't until they moved his body that they could actually see that it wasn't like, a wound in his, it was like all the way across.
Oh, so they thought the wound was here, gunshot.
Yeah, like they saw a little opening, saw a gunshot, had like ripped. But then when they went to, when they got closer.
Oh, God.
It wasn't like hanging off. It was like they moved it and then, anyways. Teague Mira, one of the responding officers who is now the chief of police for the Ashland Department, was the one who was on the scene and discovered that he had been almost decapitated. So pretty much all of my 2012 was investigating David's murder, Chief O'Meara told Dateline. He said that he's held David's case close to his heart ever since that day, that rainy September and November of 2011. It was about 5:30 p.m. And the reason I remember this so well is it was just getting dark. One of the other units was dispatched to a person down call. So we were more of an assisted medical call at that time. He said, but the chief told Dateline that he thought something more might have been going on. He said, I heard it on the radio and I said, that doesn't sound right to me. Let's go over there because that sounds like something's going on, he recalled. So when him and his partner at the time arrived to the bike path behind Hunter Park, it was already too late. It was completely dark, like pitch black, Chief O'Meara said. I encountered the paramedics who were coming out and they said that guy's definitely dead. It looks like a gunshot wound. O'Meara, who had responded to quite a few crime scenes over the year, told Dateline he knew immediately that was not a gunshot wound. We were scanning our flashlights around, he said. Our beams of light kind of came across David's body at the same time, and I saw right away that there was no way it was a gunshot wound. He said that, according to him in this interview, he said it was clear that David had been brutally attacked. Detectives were called to the scene of the crime immediately. Since it was raining, O'Meara said he had to preserve the crime scene. So one of the things I did, he said, was I drove to the Walmart and I bought 3 pop-up canopies to help keep the crime scene. And I took David's cell phone to the high-tech crimes task force that night so that the cell phone could be dumped, which I assume means like looked through.
Yeah.
So
data dump, right?
Yeah. So they didn't even have like canopy. They didn't have any way to protect this evidence really because, again, this town was just not. I imagine like if you've ever seen Gilmore Girls, like that. You know what I mean?
I just looked at the pictures. I mean, it's incredible. It looks like paintings. It looks like that. I don't know.
It's a beautiful,
very picturesque, but beautiful. All the colors change. And this was in November, so I'm sure fall was in full bloom.
Yeah,
and I'm sure just gorgeous, gorgeous,
like what you see in those movies.
Like what you see.
So they just were not prepared. So this murder of David Grubbs is described by the community as the most violent and disturbing crime in the town's history.
Oh my gosh.
Unfortunately, the town's department, like I said, was not prepared for a case like this simply because nothing like this had ever really happened. David's murder shocked the community for a number of reasons. For one, the life of a young member of the community, and an upstanding one at that, had been cruelly ended. It was such a seemingly random act of brutality, a near decapitation in a popular city park, and shouting distance from an elementary school. So,
was there a girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, love triangle? He wasn't dating anybody.
He worked, he hung out with his small group of friends, and he played video games.
He had no girls. He's handsome. Nothing.
They said no ex-lovers, no scorned lovers, no upset coworkers. Actually, one of his coworkers was his best friend. That still very much today talks about him and has memorials and all kinds of stuff for him.
Wait. How old was he?
He was 23.
Okay. And he had no exes?
They said, I mean, he may have, but they said that none of them, like none of the relationships ended on bad. You know, it was like someone went away to college or, you know, whatever. Like it wasn't like someone cheated or whatever. There was nothing like that. He was not a confrontational person. He just loved everybody and wanted everyone to be happy, and so he would use, like, he was the funny guy, like he just he loved making people laugh, like he himself was kind of a musician, like he
Seems
just
like a perfect person to kill. Of course.
I mean,
can't
that
be...
is the main reason people think it's random, because like who would want to kill him, like for what?
What would be
and he wasn't
the purpose
of
a random killing? Like,
well, and it wasn't that it was a robbery, because everything was still on him.
Right.
So they ruled that out.
Gang initiation.
So here are some of the local theories of what happened. There's not many because people are just like, what the fuck? So by and large, locals believe David's murder was likely the outcome of a transient psychotic episode. So Ashland is a bit of a hub for transients. And the article I got this from specified that they are not using the word transient to replace homeless. So they don't mean homeless. It was quoted that not only is Ashland right off the Pacific Crest Trail, it's well known as a hippie town, their words, not mine, and that Ashland is described as a well-loved pass-through, meaning that like these transients would, you know, they would travel from one city to the next, because this town was like on the border of two states. So it was just a beautiful town to travel through, be it they were moving to another town, you know, whatever. Like, so they say that this is a reasonable thought because a transient person would not have any ties to the town, and it wouldn't be an issue for them to move on because they were already in the process. But again, why would a transient person just come through? But they did say they felt like if that was the case, they may have been having a psychotic episode. So that was that theory.
Okay.
Another theory that was a little odd was that the investigators attempted to tie the murder to a similar imagery within the Assassin's Creed franchise, which is a video game that David was a fan of, but that went nowhere because, like, how would, did someone he play with come to the town and kill it? Like, there was just no way to make that even a real possibility. Another theory was that the murder was believed to be a random killing with absolutely no connection to David other than unfortunate circumstance. He just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and somebody just wanted to kill. Like, they had no motive, like they were just killing for the thrill of it.
Just to see what it felt like.
The murder weapon was believed to be a machete or blade, and the general thinking is that David was attacked from behind and blitzed, as he did not put up a fight.
Oh my God.
As mentioned, a medium or long-bladed weapon was used in the killing, so police investigated and found that not only do many people own swords in this town, but a surprising number of them carried the swords on their person.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, it gets weirder.
Wait, we just went from hippie town
no.
incredibly...
Ashland was not the hippie town. The hippie town was like next to it, and they would, when they were transitioning from one area to another, they would travel through Ashland because it was so beautiful. Okay. It was a border town.
Border. So it is a Hallmark Christmas movie location waiting to happen with everybody walking around with machetes. What the fuck? And swords. Listen, that is bonkers.
When they passed that law here a couple years ago about you could open carry or not, and people were so curious if they could carry swords and stuff. So, you know, like it's legal to walk around with swords and machetes apparently. So obviously it's a very big concern everywhere, not just in Ashland, Oregon. Not that I see people routinely walking around with swords, but it was a big deal here.
This is like postcard town with swords on the side. like it's not Ren Fair. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know. NBC quoted Chief O'Meara saying, after David was murdered, everybody had a sword on them. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but it's just the way he was talking was just like, you could just see the look on his face, like, what is happening? But he said swords were popping up left and right. We were getting complaints and calls. It's actually shocking the number of people who just walk around with swords on them. Until this case came up, I was oblivious to how many people carry machetes and how many people carry swords, he said. We were getting tips left and right, up and down from every angle, and it turns out an awful lot of people carry swords for one reason or another. And he's not talking about pocket knives, people. He is talking about full-blown swords, like long swords, machetes, blades, not like pocket knives.
Someone knocks on their door and they're like, "Park, who goes there?"
It's not like little knives.
This is weird. I don't know. I feel like that's weird.
Aren't small towns always generally actually weird under the surface?
Under the surface. You're just... I mean, is someone walking around with a log that they talk to? You know what I mean? Just like all these little quirky people.
So the chief said that they followed up on all of these tips. We contacted countless people that were carrying heavy-edged weapons. He said, we confiscated a lot of large bladed weapons, and unfortunately, none of it led anywhere. The police chief remembers the community was extremely anxious after David's murder. The bike path is a focal of life in Ashland. It struck home with a lot of people that the bike path isn't safe. People were very scared. So after his murder, like it literally terrified the town because again, David was just this great human being who seemingly was murdered in what could have been considered daylight hours on a very well-traveled path for quite literally no reason. And there was no evidence, no witnesses, no leads. And so people were very scared. They didn't want to leave home. They were terrified. Like they didn't know what to do. And that's understandable because like, what the fuck? Especially knowing that people are just walking around this town with swords and machetes for whatever reason. Investigators considered the possibility of a gang initiation. MS-13 members are known for decapitating their victims as they did during the gruesome murder of a young male in a Maryland park in 2017, which was that murder was committed in a similar fashion to David's murder in 2011. However, Ashland is not known for gang activity, but they said because they were so close to the interstate, like I-5, it was a possibility. However, they could never prove that. The gang never claimed it. Like they said, why would the gang be in Ashland? Like it was just, they couldn't find any ties whatsoever to it. And then nothing ever happened like that, like a gang type thing again. So they just kind of rolled that out as like not actually a possibility. So one explanation for why so many people in this town had swords is because there was a very popular local LARPing group, which if you're unfamiliar with that, that's live action role playing.
Yes.
So there was a local LARPing community that regularly practiced with medieval swords in the nearby.
There we go.
in the nearby Lithia Park. And
I was right.
And the police wondered if that maybe this was just a very unfortunate accident, like they were, doing the role play and someone just got,
no.
You know what I mean? But they had to consider that because it was a thing, but that went nowhere. And again, all the swords they confiscated from the LARPers and stuff had no traces or anything of blood, David, none of that. So there is an entire Reddit thread dedicated to this case. And there are so many different theories floating around there from people that have lived in the area. Some of these theories include agreeing that, again, it was an unfortunate random killing. That's really the most popular one amongst everybody. Investigators, police, the townspeople, the people on the internet. So another theory is that someone was actually jealous of David, like how popular he was, how well liked he was, how respected he was. Like they just got tired of hearing about David all the time. And so they thought that this was very much a personal attack because of how brutal it was and that it was not random. And it should be noted that there was a memorial to David, and that memorial has been destroyed twice. Like thoroughly destroyed, not a simple act of vandalism of kids messing around. Like they broke the cross. They would steal things from the memorial. They would just completely destroy it.
Put a camera by the memorial.
They're trying.
Okay, here's another question. Are there any other unsolved cases that are similar to this case?
In Ashland?
In Oregon, across this, it could have been like a serial killer seeing an opportunity and just doing it and getting out of town,
I feel like serial killers put some thought into it. You know what I mean? They're not just going to run up to someone walking on a path and decapitate them.
Maybe he knew his schedule. Maybe he knew he would be on that path.
If he knew his schedule, then he was off because David left work early. He didn't work his full shift that night. Had he worked his full shift, he may not have been on that path.
Oh, that's right.
According to his coworker, because him and his coworker, they did an interview with the boss and a coworker, and him and the coworker were really good friends. And he said that we actually worked the same shift, and David just left a little bit early that night. I was still working my shift.
So then that kind of takes away the possibility of it being somebody who hated him, because they wouldn't have known he'd be on that path
unless they were waiting for him outside of the grocery store in general and saw that he left early.
So then why couldn't the serial killer do that?
Why would he just randomly pick David and just sit there and wait? Why wouldn't he pick someone that was already at And don't they normally kill women? David wasn't a woman.
No, not necessarily. But no, David wasn't. He was a very tall gentleman. I wonder, I don't know. I guess gosh.
I'm not saying it's not possible that it was a serial killer. I'm just saying it seems unlikely because usually they target women. I'm not saying they always target women, but they normally...
You're not wrong.
There were a lot of women that walked this bike path. They had plenty of people to pick from, and they waited for David.
But is there any other unsolved case that sort of matches this, like machete decapitation? Any it is the same MO used anywhere else? I don't know. I'm sure they've looked, and I'm sure there isn't. But
so there was there have been other murders in Ashland, 2020 there was a shooting of a young girl. She was a teenager. But they caught the man that did that. A man shot her in a parking lot. It was, he was found guilty, and he was sentenced to prison. And it was not anything similar to what happened with David.
Yeah.
They talked about...
But he could have been a transient, and so he could have moved on and gone somewhere else. So I'm thinking maybe in California, if there's unsolved...
I don't know if there's any other unsolved decapitations.
Yeah, I mean,
there were lots. In later years, there were other attacks that happened. Like there was a 2021 attack on a woman where she was 38. She was stabbed to death by a man who ended up getting sentenced to like the state hospital. Like he was committed. But they don't believe that he had any connection to David's case. He was, so that man, so I'll just skip a little bit to this part and I'll come back. So there was a 33-year-old man excuse me, what year was this? I don't remember the exact. 2021. And so he was in Ashland, and his name was Ariel. I don't know how to say his name, but his last name was Skatergood, and he was sentenced to 180 days in a mental hospital. He got charged with murder for stabbing to death a 38-year-old woman, but he was also accused of attacking a man who was walking his dog. The man survived, the dog survived, but he was charged with assault, attempted murder, animal abuse. But again, he was not at all connected. He did not live in the town during that time.
I mean, were they just pulling, just let's look for any criminal?
Well, those are just murders that happened years afterwards, right? And so they're like, those were really, I mean, this town just really did not have crime, right? It's not like they had a pool of people that they could just pull from, or fingerprints on file, or like repeat offenders, right? Like they were very close to the interstate. The town was bordering another state. So it was very easy for people who wanted to get away quickly. Yeah. So anyways, back to the vandalism of the memorial. So Garrison, which was his best friend, was quoted saying, "I really hope it wasn't intentional, you know. Hopefully it was some kids or someone having a bad day or something." He said the family was very hurt by the memorial being destroyed, especially since police are still looking for who is responsible for the death of David. He said, for all we know is this person or persons is still out there. To have this event take place very shortly after the 10-year anniversary and how malicious it looks with the vandalism, I just think it could be a really huge benefit to our community to have a camera there. So they had this 10-year anniversary for David, and that's the first time the memorial was just completely destroyed. They rebuilt it and it was destroyed again after that, and then they rebuilt. He said that him and David's families hoped whoever destroyed the memorial is found and held accountable. He said, I was kind of confused when I was pulling up to the memorial. Nothing was there. The cross was broken. Garrison and David's family have replaced...
Heartbroken.
Yeah. They have replaced what was taken, and they're looking into ways to make it a permanent fixture, more like maybe a bench out there, something like that. He said, David was a very humble man, and I can imagine that he wouldn't want us to make a fuss like this, but we need to do this for the community, for the friends and family of David, and most importantly for David himself, he said. So there was only one real person of interest ever for this murder. He was a 39-year-old man named Christian De Laurentiis, and he is currently serving a life sentence for murdering his roommate Philip Lindermuth while living in Aloha, Oregon in 2012. So the story of Philip's murder is equally gruesome to that of David's. Detectives learned that Christian was in fact a bank robber, and Philip occasionally participated as Christian's getaway driver until he had kind of like gotten over it. He was tired of it. He didn't want to do it anymore. And he tried to stop, but Christian was like, no, you got to keep being my driver. So Philip threatened to expose Christian as a bank robber, which then in turn Christian murdered Philip, dismembered him, and stored the body parts in the freezer. Hey. Christian was caught when he confessed what he had done to his brother. His brother then shared with family, and their stepdad dutifully called the authorities and reported him. So his own family turned him in. It was discovered that Christian was living in Ashland at the time of David's murder and left town shortly after. So for specific reasons unknown, like the police have not released it, but in 2015, they officially announced Christian as a person of interest in David's case, but never confirmed him as a formal suspect. So I'm assuming that it's because he was in the town and he later on committed something similar.
That reminds me of that kid.
What
the kid that I did that story on, and his parents called the police on him, and they found the bags in his closet.
Yeah.
And he was like, just wanted to see.
Just wanted to see.
Just wanted to see. He was obsessed with true crime. That's it. Just wanted to see what it felt like. Terrible.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Retired detective Charlie Redser took time to look through all the evidence in 2016 to determine if there were any missing leads. He found that the investigation had been very thorough, and investigators are certain nothing had been overlooked. When I tell you these police have taken this case extremely seriously, I'm not joking. Like, some of the best, most thorough police work I've heard in any of our stories, they would routinely hire new investigators to look over evidence, to have fresh eyes on it, to make sure nothing was overlooked, nothing was missed, nothing was like maybe mislabeled, any of that. So, they were just very, very holding this case very close to them. Like, they really wanted to solve this for David's family, for his friends, for the community. Yeah. So anyways, Chief O'Meara recently told the Mail Tribune, which is a newspaper, whoever it is, we ask that they show some humanity and let the family and the community have some closure on this, especially the family. He went on to say he dreams of solving this case and giving the community a chance to heal. Garrison's mother, which again, Garrison is or was David's best friend, her name is PJ, and she told Dateline that she remembers meeting David for the first time. When Garrison brought him home from high school the first time, you know how sophomore, freshman, teenage boys sort of shuffle into the house, they look at their shoes, and then they run up the stairs really quick. She said, David was not like that. I answered the door. David put his hand out and said, "Hi, I'm David Grubbs. Nice to meet you." She said that David quickly became like a second son to her. David was the gentlest, funniest man that she had met in her life. He had a great musical talent, and he was just so gentle. In fact, said Garrison, music was how we connected. He told Dateline that David has been a huge inspiration throughout his musical career. He said, David was the reason I became a musician, and he was maybe I won't even say naturally gifted because he had been doing it for so long, but he was very gifted. Garrison was not just one of David's closest friends. He was also a coworker at the shop and cart grocery store with him. He said we would have a lot of fun at work. David actually got me my job there. He was just naturally funny and had the gift of gab, Garrison told Dateline. He had the best sense of humor. David was our token funny guy. Authorities investigating David's murder began interviewing his family, friends, acquaintances, and coworkers like almost immediately. But again, none of them raised suspicion. The family was very distraught about it. The friends genuinely loved him, like I said. The coworkers really loved him. His boss loved him. Like, it was just... it was just so, again, random. Like, we don't often do stories where the person who died was such a great person.
Well, sometimes we do.
Well, I'm not saying we don't, right?
This is like one of the most random.
Let me rephrase. Even when they are genuinely great people, they were targeted for a reason. They pissed someone off.
Yes.
they broke up with someone, they left a marriage, they got someone fired, something happened
Yes.
where the other person snapped and killed them for whatever horrible reason. David, from what everything that has been presented, was genuinely just a great human being that really didn't do anything to anyone. So I feel like it was random, which is so just crazy to me.
To
Kill
me, I
one
guess
person and leave the town.
the most plausible of your explanations was somebody who was just jealous.
But then what happened afterwards? They took the murder weapon. They hid it so well it was never found. They cried on camera and never killed again. Never didn't leave town. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe he's still in town and that's why the memorial gets destroyed.
That seems likely, because who else hated him? Someone else must have.
Yeah.
If it's not the killer who's destroying twice his memorial.
Yeah.
People don't just do that.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of unheard of.
Yeah.
People don't.
They vandalize it, but they don't completely destroy it. They don't break things, steal things, just.
And then to do it twice.
And to do it in that kind of town.
Right.
So I will say the only other murder. So the shooting of that teenage girl, while it was very sad and tragic, it didn't scare people on the level that David's death did, because it was a very open and shut case. There was, prior to David's murder in 1979, there was a Ashland man named Manny Cortez that brutally murdered two 11-year-old girls in Ashland, and it was thought that he was responsible for killing more. But that was in 1979. Oh, so, and from 1979 murders that he committed, they said there was at least 10 to 12, not all in Ashland, but the man himself was from Ashland. So from 1979 all the way to 2011, nothing else really happened. David's murdered, and then in much later years, that shooting happened and whatever else. But again, nothing was as violent as this murder on David.
Wow.
So anyways, so authorities were, like I said, they had interviewed everyone they could think of. Friends, family, coworkers, acquaintances, people passing by, people staying in the town. Mm-hmm. Nothing. So according to the chief, there was quite literally no motive thread that they could pull from. There was no scorned partner, no beef at work, no upset family members. David was just a very well-liked young man. Having been one of the first to respond to the scene that night, Chief O'Meara told Dateline he feels a personal connection to this case. He says, this case has stuck with me, has stuck around as I've made my way up to the chief position, he said. I do feel like this is something that is personal to me, and I know it's personal to a lot of people. But no matter how much time has passed, Chief O'Meara told Dateline that David's case will always remain a priority for the Ashland Police Department. He says it's omnipresent. It doesn't fade into the background. It doesn't become a memory. It is always there, he said. I take the dog for a walk through the cemetery sometimes, and David's tombstone is there. And it's just a reminder that this case is very dear to me. Chief O'Meara emphasized that he is determined to ensure David's case doesn't get forgotten, especially among his colleagues at the Ashland Police Department. He said, I really want to get to a point of resolution for this, he said. I have made it quite clear to my partners, my teammates here at the police department, that if I ever get left with the impression that we're not doing everything humanly possible to move this case forward, then there will be serious repercussions for whoever is failing to move it forward. Hey, that is quite literally almost unheard of in cases. 100%. They go cold, detectives change departments, people retire, people just give up. When I say people give up, I mean like police give up, not like the families. But this police department very much...
They're like, don't. I think that's because he's moved up from being the responding officer to being the chief.
But he is like holding the whole department responsible.
I love that. I love that.
And he even said, like, when new police officers come on board, he's like, this is the case. We're still investigating this. Like, he doesn't let them use it as an excuse that they're new officers. So in 2021, 2 new detectives were assigned to review the case so that there would be another set of fresh eyes on the information. And even in 2024, they are still looking into any and all new leads and looking for any information that someone might be able to provide about what happened that night.
Yeah.
Garrison is also determined to keep his friend's case and memory alive. He and his mother, PJ, have installed a permanent memorial at the site of David's murder. There's a bench down there, he noted. We would like to put something in the memorial a little more permanent and a little more like, hey, this is what we're here for. This is what happened here. Don't forget about it. They have set up a scholarship in David's name that raises money for other young musicians in the Ashland area. He said, I would like him to be remembered as exactly who he was. I have never known a better man in my entire life, Garrison said. I would ask the community to open their minds and open their hearts again and realize that this is still very real for a lot of people and get out of their own little bubble. Pay attention to what's around us, because when we don't, this is what happens. The chief told Dateline he feels confident that the Ashland Police Department is doing everything they can to solve this case. They just need some kind of break. Somebody out there knows something, and I have to imagine that over almost 11 years now, that was at the time of that interview.
Wow.
It's been a little bit longer now. But carrying around the burden of knowing who's responsible for such a grotesque attack on David, and by way of David, his family, and the entire community, that's got to be a lot of pressure and a lot of stress to carry around, Chief O'Meara said. I am hopeful that at some point somebody gets tired of it and they pick up the phone and type out an email or whatever, send a telegram and say, hey, I want to unburden myself of this information and give it to you. I'm tired of carrying it around. So with that being said, anyone with information is encouraged to contact the Ashland Police Department at 541-482-5211, or they do have an anonymous tip line. And these are all going to be in the show notes, but the anonymous tip line is 541-552-2333. I don't know how many threes I said, but there's 3 threes. You can also call or text Crime Stoppers of Southern Oregon and refer to the case number KTVL 122518. There is currently a $22,000 reward for any information. There is a Facebook group in his honor that will routinely post about him, which I'll link in the show notes. People routinely post memories about him in there. There was a song written about him that is in there. So people are very much keeping his memory alive today. They still have memories, memorial services for him, the anniversaries that, again, the police department won't let it go. And so
it's so disturbing, like how random it is. Because you're right. I'm sitting here thinking, like, it's never really this random. I hope if anybody does know, I feel like if I were that lady who saw someone run from the scene or walk or be leaving the scene, I feel like I'd want to like take myself to hypnosis to see if there's just anything else, because you never know what you remember.
Well, they interviewed her extensively,
really works,
and again, because it was dark and it was raining, he had his back to him.
See how tall he was, what he was wearing.
It was like from a distance, right? Because like she was coming down the path, he was at the body, and then he took off into further away into the rain, into the darkness of the night.
And he could have also just come across.
Well, and that is something else they think of, because she said she didn't see like a sword, or like the man didn't appear to be carrying anything unless he had it under like
Did she call the cops?
She did. She called immediately. Like as soon as she realized what the man was looking at, she called immediately, and she waited there until they showed up. Chief O'Meara did say, like, anytime anytime they get information that is even remotely similar, a similar case, a lead, a tip, anything, they immediately put a detective in charge of investigating it. So,
Was she considered a suspect?
no, they interviewed her extensively. She was like an older lady just out for a walk. Unfortunate to stumble upon this. But she did say that the man didn't appear, like she could see the figure, right? And he didn't appear to have anything in his hands. He just quickly was leaving the scene. So again, it's very possible he came across this and was like, nope, I'm out, right? Like, maybe the person's still around. I don't want to get murdered. Something like to that effect. Not everyone wants to get involved, unfortunately.
I got weed in my pocket. I'm out of here kind of a thing.
Maybe he was a transient, or maybe he, something, and he just truly didn't want to get involved.
Excuse me, I burped.
So... one other thing, he did note that they did bring the FBI in, and even the FBI could not find a pattern.
Ooh,
so you were asking about
that answers that question.
So I forgot that.
That answers that question.
Yeah,
the
FBI said that, he said this to quote, "This is abnormal. It doesn't fit any patterns. This isn't something that the FBI could provide a lot of information on to assist the investigation." They basically said it was just a heartbreaking situation. So yeah, there was not anything. And the police department are offering the $22,000. Crime Stoppers is offering another $1,000, so essentially $23,000. So anyways, if you see something, say something. All the numbers and case numbers will be in the show notes.
All right. Well, what we're doing next week, it will be a surprise. It's gonna be a surprise.
All right.
So, I got nothing to add. It is your birthday week next week.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
I didn't have the.
Okay.
Sorry. Let me do my.
Oh my god, it's okay.
So yeah, we'll celebrate next week. But that's all I got.
That's all I got.
All right. So if you see something, say something, and meet us back here to celebrate Ashley's birthday next week. Bye.